To get a win in Arrowhead against the Kansas City Chiefs, the blueprint for the Philadelphia Eagles is going to be the same as Super Bowl 59, attack. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Eagles fans. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Louis DiBiase. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We have a massive game for the Eagles already. Week 2 of the 2025 NFL season. They have a Super Bowl 59 rematch this Sunday, the national 425 game in Arrowhead against Patrick Mahomes in the 0-1 Kansas City Chiefs, who are a desperate football team. They do not want to drop to 0-2. I couldn't tell you the last time the Chiefs dropped to 0-2. I don't know if they've ever done it in the Patrick Mahomes Andy Reid era. To lose 3 straight games when you count the Super Bowl as well. 3 straight losses to the Philadelphia Eagles, 2023, 2024, potentially now 2025. There is a lot of desperation, I think, in Kansas City to make sure they get a win, stop the bleeding, and make sure that in an AFC West that is really competitive right now, all 3 other teams won week 1, that they stay up to par with those teams. So the Eagles, they have their work cut out for them, especially on the road in a really tough environment. This is not going to be an easy football game for the Birds. But if they're going to do this, if they're going to beat the Chiefs yet again, and it feels like just rip the torch from that organization and say, we're the team now. Like, yeah, maybe we beat you in one championship like the 2015 Golden State Warriors that were emerging, but LeBron and the Cavs still ran the NBA. If they want to now become the 2017 and on Warriors with Kevin Durant saying, no, like this is our league now, a win this Sunday would make a huge statement. Because at that point, like I said, Jalen Hurts would have beaten and potentially outperformed Patrick Mahomes 3 straight times that they faced off. If they're going to do that, I think they need to attack on both sides of the football, but especially on defense. I think the pass rush is going to be the key to a win against Kansas City, just like it was in Super Bowl 59. If they're going to win this game, the blueprint, I think, is going to be exactly the same as it was last February in New Orleans. They have to get to Patrick Mahomes. They need Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jalen Hunt, that big 3. They need Jordan Davis from last week to be the same pass rusher he was against Dallas, against Kansas City. Moro Ijoma, Zadarius Smith, Josh Uche. They need these guys to pin their ears back and go attack Mahomes, because as good as Jalen Hurts was in Super Bowl 59, as good as A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith were in that offensive line, as good as Cooper DeJean's pick 6 was, and Zach Bond's diving interception, Quinyon Mitchell was just on lockdown mode that entire game. Everybody played well. Special teams, offense, defense. It was a complete team effort to stop a dynasty from three-peating. The main reason they won that football game is because of the defensive line. It's because Patrick Mahomes was running for his life. Kansas City could not protect him. That's honestly the only reason, I think, not the only reason, but the main reason the Chiefs have lost both of their Super Bowls that they've been to that they didn't win. They've been to 5 Super Bowls in the last 7 years, and they've won 3 of them. The 2 they lost to Philadelphia and Tampa Bay, it was because of the pass rush of the opposing defense. And I don't think that blueprint is going to change this Sunday, because if you do get to Mahomes and you can't finish, or if he is protected, even potentially without Xavier Worthy in this matchup, he has a banged up shoulder. Even if he plays, he's going to have a brace on. He's not going to be at 100%. We know Rashee Rice is injured, or suspended, I should say. So the Chiefs are going to only really have Hollywood Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster receiver. So you have an advantage there. But even so, if Mahomes is protected, if you don't finish when he gets outside of structure, he's still going to find a way to make plays. And that's why finishing is so key. Like, the pass rush was really good last week against Dallas, but Jordan Davis should have had 2 sacks, and he had none. Josh Uche should have had a couple sacks. He had 0. Jalen Hunt should have had a strip sack in the first quarter. Nobody was able to register a sack on Dak Prescott despite the pressure that they got on him, because they had him in his grasp a couple times, Jordan Davis that is. Jalen Hunt was like a split second away from getting a strip sack. Same with Josh Uche. They just couldn't get there in time, or if they were there, they couldn't get Dak to the ground. Finishing against Mahomes is going to be so key because, like I said, even with those receivers banged up, Mahomes is like the king of making plays with his arm and his legs outside of structure. It's him, it's Jalen, it's Lamar, it's Allen, like that big five, those top five quarterbacks, Joe Burrow included, like they are so lethal. If you don't get them down the first time, they're going to make you pay. And I thought Mahomes did that pretty well, even though they lost on Friday against the Chargers. And again, their receivers were banged up. No Worthy for the majority of that game. No Rashee Rice. Mahomes still made plays. So to me, like that is the blueprint. They need to get Mahomes down on the ground. They need to get to him, and they need to finish. I feel really good, though, about that matchup. I think the Chiefs' offensive line was definitely better on Friday night compared to the Super Bowl, but the Eagles still have the advantage in this matchup. Like, yeah, they don't have Milton Williams anymore. They don't have Josh Sweat. They don't have Brandon Graham. But like I said, they do have an ascending Jordan Davis that was one of the best pass rushers in that football game for 4 quarters against Dallas. Even Vic Fangio said that was a different JD they saw. Last year's version of Jordan Davis would not have been able to play 50 snaps all game and get to the quarterback as consistently as he did, while also still being an elite run stopper. They have an ascending Jordan Davis. They have Jalen Carter returning. He did not play in that football game. The NFL ruled that yesterday he should be fined $57,000, which is a game check for Jalen, but he basically served his suspension against the Cowboys, so he's playing in this game. The Eagles get back their best defensive tackle, the best defensive tackle in the NFL. You've got the week 1 best pass rusher in football, according to pass rush win rate stats and pass rush grades on PFF. Josh Uche was the best pass rusher of week 1. If he can continue that momentum and kind of get a little bit of a revenge game going against Kansas City, remember last year with the Chiefs, Uche was a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl. And then, it's not just them. Nolan Smith. I went back and watched the game the other day against Dallas, and I thought he was dominant, and then I saw the numbers back it up. He actually had the 8th highest pass rush win rate of anybody in week 1. Jalen Hunt played really well, nearly had that strip sack in the first quarter. You got Zadarius Smith coming into the fold. Moro Ojomo was an underrated playmaker in that game against the Cowboys. Definitely generated some pressure and played a lot of snaps. So the Eagles have 7 pass rushers that I'm really excited about for this matchup. And then even like Byron Young as your 8th guy. Now that Gabe Hall isn't on the team anymore, I imagine Ty Robinson will be dressed, and he had 7 sacks last year with Nebraska. They could be 9 deep with pass rushers, and that's really important because, like I said, I think of anything in this matchup, what's going to dictate a win or a loss is if they can get to Patrick Mahomes and if they can get him to the ground. That's how they won the Super Bowl. That's how they lost Super Bowl 57, not being able to get to Mahomes and not being able to finish. Now, granted, a lot of that was because of the field conditions, but when Mahomes wins a Super Bowl, when he wins football games, you can't get to him or you can't get him down. And when he loses, normally because he's running for his life, and you get him to the football field down in the ground. So that's the blueprint for me. Like, that's the main thing I'm watching. If the Eagles are going to beat the Chiefs in a really tough situation, it's because their defensive line looked as good as it did last week, and now this time around they finish with Jalen Carter back into the fold. But it's not just the pass rush that's key in this game. I think the exact same blueprint on offense from Super Bowl 59 is also how you're going to beat the Chiefs. I think they have to win with the passing game on offense, and I'll tell you why coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer every single week. Right now, new customers, you can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the entire app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Whether it's player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds, they've got it all. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team, whether you take the Eagles' money line, or maybe you're betting some money on the guys you have in your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And guys, today's show, we are also brought to you by Supply House. Brought to you by Supply House on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people and real service. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. As I said, the key to a win against the Chiefs is the same as it was in Super Bowl 59. On defense, it's getting to Patrick Mahomes, generating a pass rush, but also finishing this time around like they did in the Super Bowl last week against Dallas. As I mentioned, I thought Uche, Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, Jordan Davis, Moro Ijoma, they were all great getting to the quarterback, but they could not get Dak down on the ground. Against the Chiefs, they have to do that. Luckily, they get Jalen Carter back. They're adding Zadarius Smith. This is a really important game for that defensive line to finish and to get to Mahomes in general. On offense, I actually agree with what they did in Super Bowl 59. I think the exact same blueprint needs to be backed up on that side of the ball as well, because although Jalen Hurts made the Chiefs absolutely pay for going all in on stopping Saquon Barkley, on sending blitz packages and just stacking the box, Jalen in the Super Bowl was 17 of 22 through the air, 221 passing yards, and 2 passing touchdowns, including the dagger to Devontae Smith. Even though Hurts did make Spagnuolo's defense pay for the blueprint that they had, I do think Kansas City's going to try to do the same thing and say, do it again. We're still going to try to take out Saquon Barkley and your running offense because that's your bread and butter. Let's see Jalen do it again. I think they're going to dare the Eagles to throw the football, and they need to do exactly what they did in the Super Bowl. They need to make them pay for stacking the box. Now, last week, and I think especially if the Chiefs watch that tape from the Cowboys, especially after the Cowboys game, after the lightning delay, they'll see that the Eagles did not handle pressure as well as they did in the Super Bowl. The disguise looks, the blitzes off the edge from corners and stunts from linebackers and defensive linemen. I did not think the offensive line handled that kind of pressure very well. They failed to protect Jalen and to communicate and to adjust. I thought Jalen Hurts this time didn't get the ball out as quickly. I thought he dropped his eyes a little bit too fast like he used to, and instantly tried to just run and make out of nothing, which Hurts does best, but at times you got to keep your eyes up and look for the quick open man. But I also thought Kevin Patullo didn't really provide Jalen with a lot of quick hot reads in those obvious pressure looks. So they definitely need to get back to who they were against pressure when a team is stacking the box, who they were against Kansas City versus who they were against Dallas. And when you are stacking the box, even if they aren't blitzing and pressuring you, you got to make them back up by having success vertically, like those layer throws over the middle of the field, taking deep shots, just getting the ball out quickly in the hands of your playmakers, whether it's A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith or Dallas Goedert. I think the quick passing game is going to be really key in this football game. I think just the passing game in general, taking shots deep, getting the ball out fast, misdirection. One thing I loved about Patullo's game plan in that matchup against Dallas, they did a lot of under center play action. Get Jalen Hurts on the move. That'll help kind of counteract what the Chiefs are going to do with pressure. Some RPO looks as well. I think the passing game is really, really important in this matchup. You're still going to run the football. You're not going to abandon the run. Saquon Barkley is still going to be featured heavily in this game. But I don't think the Chiefs are going to waver from who they were, what they were trying to do in the Super Bowl. Yes, Jalen Hurts made them pay, but I think they're going to dare him to do it again. Hopefully A.J. Brown is a little bit healthier this time around. Going back and watching the tape, he definitely did not look 100%. Now, are the Eagles going to say that? No, but we know this guy. We've been watching him for a long time, and he definitely did not look very effective getting open. If he wasn't hurt, then that's alarming because he either wasn't trying or he was not doing a great job of creating separation in a game that I thought he had the advantage in that game against Dallas' secondary. So hopefully A.J. Brown is healthier, and hopefully they have a better answer for pressure, because knowing Spagnuolo, like, they're going to send it against Jalen Hurts, especially considering Dallas had success in that way on Thursday night. So that to me is like a really important matchup, is throwing the football. And I think also when you look at it too, Jahan Dotson and Dallas Goedert, they're probably going to be important again, because I do think the focus is going to be on creating that shell on A.J. Brown. I think Devontae Smith in the slot is something I want to see too. I think those role players on offense in the passing game are going to be important. So to me, like on defense, I think the key to this game in general for the Eagles to win is just how they affect how the passing game is impacted in a negative way on defense, like stopping the passing game on defense and creating explosive passing and efficient passing on offense. That to me is the key to beat Kansas City. Again, it's a really tough environment. You're going on the road, a place that is normally very hard to play, against a Chiefs team that I don't want to say they're desperate, but they need this win. Like, going 0-2 in the NFL really puts you behind the eight ball, especially when you have a first place schedule like Kansas City has. You got to play a lot of catch up. The AFC West right now looks good. I mean, I got to eat crow. Justin Herbert and the Chargers looked incredible in that matchup on Friday against the Chiefs in Brazil. The Raiders, while they just beat the Patriots, Geno Smith looked very effective as a starter. And then the Denver Broncos were able to get a win as well. So Kansas City needs this game. It's on the road. You know they're trying to get their lick back against Philadelphia. They've lost 2 straight games to the Birds, in Arrowhead in 2023, in Super Bowl 59 in 2024. There's a lot that's going against the Eagles in this matchup. But the good thing is, I think they have the advantage when you look at their roster. Like, yeah, all these non-quantifiable things say it's a difficult situation, a difficult environment to go into. But when you're talking about things that you can measure on the field, the Eagles do have the advantage in most matchups. Like, even though I'm saying you got to make sure you get Mahomes down to the ground, he's going to be behind the eight ball with only really one effective receiver in this matchup, and it's Hollywood Brown, who did look good against the Chargers. But if Xavier Worthy plays, he's not going to be 100%. I don't know if he's going to play. Rashee Rice is suspended. Travis Kelce kind of looked like a shell of himself again in that game against LA, despite the touchdown that he did have in the second half. I thought the offensive line was up and down. I think the Eagles have the advantage in the areas that they need to win. Of course, the Chiefs secondary is still pretty good, but Justin Herbert threw for over 300 yards and multiple touchdowns in that game. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's not an easy matchup, a Super Bowl rematch. You're playing the best quarterback, in my opinion, still in football, on the road, a desperate team that needs a win. But when you talk about like the actual matchups, I think Philadelphia clearly still, even with the up and down play of last week, they're clearly still the better football team. So we'll see what happens, but that's the key for me, taking a first look at this matchup. Get to Patrick Mahomes with the pass rush, finish this time around compared to the game against Dallas, and then Jalen Hurts and the passing game need to back up Spagnuolo's defense, which is likely going to stack the box and try to create a lot of pressure. All right, guys, we'll wrap up this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. Coming up next, Jalen Hurts against Patrick Mahomes is quietly becoming the LeBron James versus Steph Curry of the NFL. And yet, when you talk about comparing the two and why people hype up Patrick Mahomes or discredit Jalen, there's a lot of hypocrisy in that, and I'll tell you why coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We are wrapping up this Wednesday edition of the show, taking a first look at Eagles Chiefs round 4 for Jalen Hurts versus Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes got Jalen in 2021, defeated him in the Super Bowl in 2022, Super Bowl 57. But Jalen has gotten the last 2 games. And in the last 3 games, he's been the better quarterback. They beat him in Arrowhead in 2023. Jalen got the win in Arrowhead over Mahomes. And of course, he got his lick back in Super Bowl 59. Outperformed Patrick Mahomes in the last 2 Super Bowls that they have played against each other. Crazy enough, as I said before the break, this is kind of becoming LeBron versus Steph. Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts are the only quarterback duo in NFL history that have both played against each other multiple times in the Super Bowl and both won Super Bowls against one another. And now, because the Eagles and the Chiefs are kind of the cream of the crop in both conferences, like the Golden State Warriors were in the Cleveland Cavaliers for, more than half a decade, for 6 to 7 years, the Eagles-Chiefs rivalry is kind of becoming that out-of-conference Cavs-Warriors rivalry. I mean, they've played in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. The Chiefs are this era's New England Patriots, a dynasty that's won 3 Super Bowls, nearly three-peated. They repeated as champions in 2022 and 2023. They've been to 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls, which is unbelievable. They're the dynasty of this era, and the Eagles are slowly knocking on that door. They've been to 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. They've been to 3 Super Bowls in under a decade in the last 8 years. They have 2 rings in that span. Jalen Hurts, the Nick Sirianni era, all they do is win and make deep playoff runs. This is becoming a massive, all-time classic sports rivalry. But it's interesting, I think of it that way. I think Eagles fans think of it that way. I think Chiefs fans also see it that way. I'll give Chiefs fans credit. I think Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid, maybe because it's the connections they have with the Kelseys and the Eagles organization, I feel like they know how good the Eagles are. They know how good Jalen Hurts is, but it feels like still the rest of the national perspective is that these 2 quarterbacks are not on the same level. And while Patrick Mahomes is still the better football player with 3 rings, he is still the standard of quarterback in the NFL right now. It is kind of hypocritical why people hype up Mahomes, why they put him number 1, clearly ahead of Jalen, ahead of Josh Allen, ahead of Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, but they don't use those same things to credit Jalen Hurts that they do for Patrick Mahomes. They almost use the same things that the reasons they put Mahomes ahead of those other 4-star quarterbacks in the top 5, those same reasons you could also argue that puts Jalen ahead of those players, or at least ahead of other guys that are ranked ahead of him. And yet, the same accolades are not used for Jalen that are for Mahomes. Why is Patrick Mahomes still considered the number 1 guy over Josh Allen, over Lamar Jackson, over Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts, when Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow all put up better numbers, when Jalen Hurts has outperformed him in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls, has beaten him in the championship, has a ring, was an MVP runner-up a couple years ago, has beaten Mahomes in the last 2 games. Why is Mahomes still ahead of those other 4 quarterbacks? It's because he's won 3 Super Bowls. He's been to 5 of the last 6. It's because he's the most clutch quarterback still in the NFL, that despite the numbers not being there in the first 3 quarters, he is still the most dangerous player in the NFL in the 4th quarter. Josh Allen, clearly, as we saw on Sunday night, is very close behind that, but Mahomes is still that guy. So people say, despite the numbers going in favor of Lamar and Allen and Burrow, Mahomes is still number 1 because he beats those guys, he gets more rings, and he just wins more. He makes it to more championships, and he's more clutch when it matters most. Okay, interesting. So Jalen Hurts, while he doesn't put up the same numbers as Josh Allen, as Lamar Jackson, as Joe Burrow, not even those guys, because I don't even want to rank him ahead of those players. Let's compare Jalen to guys that are ranked ahead of him that shouldn't be, like Justin Herbert. Sometimes it's Dak Prescott and CJ Stroud or Jaden Daniels. Interesting. Jalen's not ahead of those guys, and these national media people or fans in general scoff at the idea of putting Hurts in the same category as the top 4. But you could use the same accolades for Hurts that you use for Mahomes to defend him. Jalen Hurts wins more than a lot of these top quarterbacks. He has a ring. Josh Allen doesn't have a ring. Lamar Jackson doesn't have a ring. Joe Burrow doesn't have a ring. Jalen Hurts doesn't choke as much as those players in big pressure moments. He is a better 4th quarter player than Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. He's been to more Super Bowls. He's beaten those guys in head-to-head matchups. All the things that put Mahomes ahead of those players. For some reason, we don't give the same credit to Jalen. And I don't know why. I know Mahomes has elevated his team more because he's had to. His receiving core since Tyreek Hill has been very up and down, very banged up, not very talented. But Mahomes has still had a very strong support system, and he's not taking credit away. Nobody discredits him for having the best play caller of all time as his head coach, for having the greatest tight end of all time with him as his safety blanket for nearly a decade, for having an elite defense that carried you the majority of last year. All those things that people don't give Jalen enough credit for, and the things that they knock him for, we don't apply those same rules to Patrick Mahomes, and I don't think they should. I think Mahomes should get that credit for the strengths, the pros that he possesses, but why are we not applying that to Jalen Hurts as well? That is my issue with the quarterback debates nowadays. There is so much hypocrisy, and the rules for each player are different based on the narrative that you're trying to drive, based on, in my opinion, the pre-draft opinion that you had of these prospects, or the opinion that you formulated years ago that with new evidence, you refuse to adjust your perspective. I was the biggest Jalen Hurts hater of all time in 2021. I wanted guys like Malik Willis as the starter instead in 2022. Or, God, I was watching Matt Corral film and trying to talk myself into it. Or the idea of trading for Russell Wilson. Even Derek Carr, I was talking about every option that wasn't Jalen. And with more evidence to prove me wrong, I have now become a staunch Jalen Hurts defender. It's just there's so much hypocrisy in these quarterback debates, and Jalen so clearly is in that tier with Mahomes, Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. I think outplaying the Tom Brady of our generation in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls and beating him in back-to-back games has to count for something. I think it's kind of interesting to make an NBA comparison like I've already been doing with LeBron versus Steph. Jalen Hurts is kind of almost like the Kawhi Leonard to Pat Mahomes' LeBron, where Kawhi was kind of in those finals of 2013 or 2014 and yeah, it was 2013 and 2014 against the Spurs, Heat Spurs. Kawhi was kind of Mahomes' or LeBron's kryptonite. But people never really gave Kawhi a lot of credit back then because he was on a really great Spurs team. Despite him being the best player on that team, he didn't get a lot of credit because Tim Duncan was there and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker and, Popovich was his coach. But Kawhi was the guy that limited LeBron and helped them get that ring in 2014. He's a quiet, reserved star. He was on great teams. Jalen Hurts is kind of the Kawhi, I feel like, of the NFL. He's kind of the Kawhi to Pat Mahomes' LeBron, where he has had his number, and I think he belongs in that same tier. But for all these other reasons that he can't really control, he's not given the same credit. And I think he should because, the proof's in the pudding. And I think Jalen Hurts last week, all offseason, people talked about Hurts being carried for the entire 2024 season. Well, when he wasn't in the NFC Championship, when he wasn't in the Super Bowl, when he had to throw to help them win the game, guess what? He did it. In the Super Bowl in 2022 against Pat Mahomes, when he had to throw to keep them in the game, he did it. Last week against Dallas, guess what? The defense was not good in the first half. A.J. Brown was banged up. Nobody was getting open. The run game was inconsistent. What did Jalen Hurts do? He carried them. I think this game, this matchup, I really am hoping that Jalen has a big one because maybe it won't shut everybody up. If the Super Bowl didn't shut everybody up, winning MVP and beating and outperforming Mahomes again, I don't know if it'll ever change, but man, I would love to see Jalen drop 250 plus passing yards, a couple touchdowns, go into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs again and say, this is our league now. It's the passing of the torch. LeBron, Steph and the Warriors are taking this. I would love to see that. It would be such an awesome story. It's a big opportunity for Jalen Hurts. If he doesn't, though, again, everything I'm saying is still true. He is still a top 5 quarterback in my opinion. And it just goes to show the Mahomes-Hurts comparisons, the reasons for putting Mahomes 1 but not Jalen in the top 5 for some is just so hypocritical. And man, I've never wanted Jalen Hurts to have a bigger game than in this one on Sunday. We'll see what happens. We're going to continue to dive into the matchup tomorrow, crossover Thursday with the guys of Locked On Chiefs, and I got a show for you still Friday as well. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Until tomorrow, thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.